everyone. My name is Anjie Vichayanonda, and I am the founder of Leg Up Legal. We provide a mentoring program that connects pre-law students to lawyers for mentoring so they can learn more about law school and the legal profession before they decide whether or not it's right for them. And we started doing these Zoom meetups so that you all could get some information that'll help you in your careers. And so today I wanted to just do a very informal kind of ask me anything about law school, because I felt like I had a bunch of questions before going to law school, even ones that I thought were really stupid. And I actually had a mentor who was so kind and answered a lot of those questions for me. And so I didn't feel like I was showing up like a deer in the headlights on the first day of law school. So I want to make sure that all of you guys have the opportunity to ask me any questions that you want. There are no stupid questions and there are no topics that are off limits. So feel free, ask away. And we even have a current law student on, so you can get her perspective too. So please feel free, ask your questions. But before we start all that, to give you guys time to think about your questions, I will tell you just a little bit of general advice that I have for people who are thinking about going to law school. First, if you are just now thinking about going to law school and it's here January and you're thinking that you're going to go in August, you may want to pump the brakes. So first things first, law school admissions is a game. And it's a game that not many people know how to play, and it starts far in advance. So most law school applications will open in September and August, and it's a rolling admissions process, which means they will admit people all the way from September all the way to March and April, usually when the application deadlines close. And they will just keep on admitting people throughout the summer. So a lot of people will get their second round decisions during the summer. Now, that means that if you have decided that you want to go to law school here in January, you have not taken the LSAT, and you're going to need to take an LSAT and get your score back in time to apply, you wouldn't be able to apply until probably about February at the earliest, or maybe March. And that is very late in the rolling admission cycle. So most people would have started getting acceptances by then. The types of people that you're competing with are going to be people who have better scores. So you're going to have a much more competitive cycle, and you're going to be competing for fewer spots because lots of people have already been admitted at the beginning of the cycle. So it may behoove you to not just apply in this cycle, but also apply in the next cycle. And nobody ever wants to hear that because they're always in a hurry to go. But I always tell people, you want to make sure that you play the game right and on your terms. So you want to make sure you're getting into the best law school that you could get into that is a good fit for you, and that you know what that good fit is. So the second thing that I wish that people would have said when I was applying to law school is that rankings, yes, they matter, but they're not all that matters. So there's tons of different factors into what, creates the perfect fit of a law school for you. So it might be location. You may have a family, or you may have an existing job, and you may simply not be able to pick up your entire life and move across the country to go to another law school. And so that might really drive your decisions in going to law school. Also, the expense, let's just be frank, law school is way more expensive now than it's ever been. It has outpaced inflation by 4 times in the last 2 decades. So yes, there were times when you could have gone to law school for all 3 years, all in for $70,000 and paid that back in the first 5 years of your practice. No longer is that true. Most people are going to end up with a significant amount of debt, and that will take a long time to pay off. So the other thing, which is highly related to the amount of money that you're going to pay to go to law school, is how much money are you going to make as a lawyer? Not all lawyers make a ton of money. People think that they're all going to go to law school to make bank. All of you think you're going to be rich. And that may not be true. So the differences in lawyer salaries are huge. There are some lawyers that make, yes, $190,000 coming out of law school. There are some lawyers that make $40,000 coming out of law school. Now, if you want to see what the distribution of first year salaries looks like, the National Association of Law Placement, NALP, actually releases a salary distribution chart that shows you what first year attorneys actually make. So you can see that like a good chunk of people who are graduating from law school make somewhere between $40,000 a year to $90,000 a year. Like about 60% of the students who graduate from law school will fall into that range. Then there's not that many people who make somewhere between 90,000 and 180,000 because that range is a lot more rare. And then you'll see this huge spike on the other side at 190,000. So people are like, how do people make that $190,000 salary? Well, the largest law firms in America, what we call big law, typically compete for top talent out of law schools. And so these are people in the top 10% of their class, at regional schools, or maybe even, the down to top 25% at the major top 14 law schools. And so typically those types of salaries will be garnered by the top ranking people in your class, and there's only about 10 to 15% of those people graduating with you are going to be making that kind of money. So if you're going to be going to a law school that's really, really expensive, if you're going to a T14 school like Yale or Columbia or Stanford, and you're thinking you want to be at one of these big law firms, then you might have a hope and a prayer of paying that back. Now, if you're telling me that you want to go to law school to help people and you want to go be a public defender out of law school, going to Yale or Harvard or Stanford may not be the best bet because it's going to be too expensive. It's going to price you out from being able to go serve the public because you're going to be making way too low of a salary to be able to support your law school debt. So, unless you're independently wealthy, if you're independently wealthy or your parents will pay for law school, then hey, go to the best law school you can afford. But other than that, I mean, I was never one of those people that I didn't have to think about money. So I think that it's a very frank conversation you need to have with yourself. Like, how much do you think this law degree is worth, and how much do you think you're really going to make? If you don't know what lawyers make, that is the other thing that I would do some research on. So before going to law school, please, guys, do some career exploration. Figure out what types of lawyers are out there and what does it look like to actually practice as that kind of lawyer. Whether it's networking with lawyers through LinkedIn or through Zoom or through whatever means that you have, or going to work for lawyers as legal assistants or whatever, get a taste of what that world is like, because law school itself is a very academic exercise. So you will not really get a sense of what practicing law will be like through law school. And if you go through taking the LSAT, going to law school, taking the bar exam, all of those things, they're all very academic in nature. You could still get out on the other side and hate being a lawyer. But now you're 6 figures of debt in, and there's nothing else you can do to pay that off. So don't do that to yourself. Spend some time talking to a lot of lawyers, learning about a lot of different types of career paths. The career path for a criminal law lawyer is way different than the career path of an intellectual property law lawyer. So take some time getting to know what practice areas are out there. Now, some practice areas are really, really broad. So corporate law, for example, everybody tells me, oh, I'm interested in something corporate or business. That's really, really broad. That may cover 40 different types of things underneath it. It may cover restructuring. It may cover mergers and acquisitions. It may cover fund formation, private equity, venture capital. Like, all of those things might fall under the giant umbrella of corporate law. Now, there are some practice areas that are super, super small and very, very niche, like the one that I practice. I practice trademark and copyright law. That's like this big compared to all the other types of areas of law. So, and I only say this because depending on the practice area that you're interested in, that might also change the game of what kind of law school you apply to. So when I was thinking about going to law school, I met tons of different lawyers in lots of different practice areas. And eventually I came across a trademark and copyright lawyer, and I became really interested in trademark and copyright. And I asked him, hey, these are the law schools that I'm applying to. What do you think? And he was like, no, that's not going to work. And I was like, what? And he said, listen, trademark and copyright law is super niche. And because of that, not that many law schools teach it really well or have lots of extracurricular activities in that area. So we actually only do on campus interviewing at these 8 law schools, and you have only applied to one. So I literally had to take his list. I applied last minute to all the other 7 law schools. And luckily, a lot of those law schools, even though they were higher ranked in intellectual property law, they were lower ranked in the US News rankings. And so not only did I get into those schools, I also got way better scholarship offers. So I was able to go to law school without having to dig myself into a giant mound of debt because I had talked to practitioners and learned more about the practice area that I was getting into. So all that being said, there's lots of different reasons why you may choose a particular law school over another. Another new thing that has come out recently, especially during the pandemic, is the hybrid law school programs. So the ABA for the longest time avoided allowing you to do online law school. They didn't want anybody getting an online law degree because they didn't think that it was going to be effective to teach the legal education curriculum through just online means. So, which we are all testing now. That's awfully funny. Part-time JD programs allow you to go to school um, part-time, which means you still have to go to campus. You can either go in the day or evening. Some schools only have evening programs, some schools only have day programs, but you're still part-time. So you're stretching out your coursework longer. So a part-time program will typically take 4 years instead of 3 years, or sometimes even 4.5 years. And you're stretching it out so that you can work during the day or take care of your family and then go to law school part-time. That still requires you, though, to go to school on campus in non-COVID times. So that means you'd still have to relocate to wherever it is the law school is. Now, these hybrid programs allow you to just go to law school and you only have to go to campus a limited number of times. So some of them you only have to go to campus like twice a semester and you fly in for a weekend. You stay for like a long weekend, 4 days, and you're just meeting everybody on campus and doing classes during the 4 days, and then you fly back. So you're still allowed to work full time. You can pretty much, schedule everything else accordingly. The other parts of your curriculum are all online and self-paced. And so it's a lot more helpful for people who want to stay working full time and then go to law school as a hybrid program. So that's like totally different and new. And that just came around, I think in 2013 was the first one that was launched. And now there's only a handful. There's like 7 or 8 of them. So just know that those are all options now. So you don't have to just drop everything, go to law school for 3 years. And, and for some people, that's just not simply possible. So just wanted you guys to know all of those things. So I'm going to go ahead and just dive into the chat box because we have a ton of questions already. But y'all feel free as I'm talking, if you have like questions or follow-ups, or you're like, hey, you said something, but I don't really understand it, just jump on camera and tell me. So question 1. Tell me about the required costs of college that aren't or of law school that aren't the same as college. So I don't know if there's really that many that aren't the same as college. I mean, you still have tuition, fees, books, all the living expenses, all of that. I mean, I guess you would have stuff to participate in extracurricular activities. So sometimes you'll have to pay like entry fees into competitions or things like that, or travel for competitions. But other than that, I mean, there's not really that much that wouldn't be covered by financial aid. So it's the same types of things that you would pay for college. But that being said, at the very end of law school, you have to take the bar exam. Most of that summer, you're still going to have to find a way to support yourself, pay your rent, have food while you're studying for the bar exam. And most of the time, you won't be able to use your loans for that. So you will either have to like really save up all your loan money from your 3rd year and then stretch it real thin so that you'll have that money to cover you during bar study, or you'll have to take out a private bar loan, which is usually extremely expensive, just to warn everybody. So that is a good point, that the bar stuff is not covered. You do have to, pay for the bar exam itself, and you have to pay for the character and fitness application. So all of those fees, I think Virginia, all in all, I think I paid 530 something. So that's not inexpensive. So, and then yes, and then the MPRE I think was a lot cheaper. It was like maybe $85 or 100 something for the MPRE, which is the multi-state professional responsibility exam that everyone has to take, and I also didn't know about before I went to law school. So yes, those fees are not generally covered by your financial aid either, so be prepared for that. Question 2, for full-time day programs, what does your schedule typically look like? And for 1Ls who can't choose their schedule, for example, is it 3 days a week, all day, or 5 hours per day during the weekdays? Okay, so it really depends on the school. So my first year schedule, I had class every day except for Fridays, and I think we were on campus about 4 to 5 hours. And then I had and that was kind of spread out. Like I had one evening class, but then the others were all during the day. But I think it also has to do with like your faculty and when they're available to teach. So so for full time, it's really kind of whatever your school has available, you just have to pick. There were several, most of the time I think my school tried to not have classes on Fridays, so most of the time I was able to stack it to where I didn't have to be on campus on a Friday. um, let's see, but it really depends on the school, so make sure that you know what your school schedule offers and allows. Question 3, tell me about the costs that are not required but are more than worth the investment. Oh, bar prep. Like there is no point in going to law school for all 3 years if you're going to fail the bar exam. Like, just pay for the course, whatever it is. You know what? Even when you get into law school, I was one of these. You can be a rep for one of the bar prep companies. So you can be a rep for Kaplan or Barbary or one of the big companies, and they will pay for your course for free if you sign up all your friends. And it's not all that hard to sign up your friends because honestly, nobody wants to fail the bar. So, I mean, go and invest yourself in a bar course because you absolutely should have it. I would say, other things that were worth a lot, I took a lot of unpaid jobs. You're just sometimes the unpaid experience is just worth it. So, in a way, like, no, you're not paying for it, but you kind of are because you're foregoing other paid employment. So, I would say don't discount the unpaid experiences. They can be worth more than their weight in money. So, and then other things that you should pay for. Um, oh, I think now that I've heard of like there's study aids. We used to just buy giant books of study aids, but now there's like subscription study aids. So there's like Quimby and like a whole bunch of other different ones that I've heard from the law students that I know. So I would definitely pay for some sort of study aid. I mean, I think I bought, gosh, dozens of study aids over the course of my law school career because they just help you understand the material so much better. So definitely pay for those. I don't know. Viola, do you have any thoughts on that?
I
You're
do.
currently in it.
Sure, two things. My school, UNT Dallas College of Law, is a Barbary school, and they're incentivized to increase their bar passage rate so that we can get accreditation. And so they're paying for our bar.
Oh my
Um,
God, that's amazing.
right. So some schools will wrap in the bar prep with their package, I guess. And then I am paying for Adobe Professional. That's just one of those, programs, software that's really expensive, but you use it so much that, it's kind of, I mean,
Oh
I
yeah,
use
like
it,
formatting documents and everything.
right, right.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's all. But I mean, when you're looking at what schools to go to, look to see if they're, a bar prep included school.
And do you pay for Quimby or anything like that?
No, I don't. No.
Okay. Yeah. And then I mean, when I was in school, like, so Lexis and Westlaw are all of like the research tools. Those are all usually provided to you free. So I never had to pay for any of those. But yeah, there's probably a bunch of extra additional study tools that would be nice. I mean, obviously make sure you have the good technology, especially in these days. So like have a good computer and all those things. Let's see.
Yeah, I recommend the multiple screen setup.
Yeah, dual screen setup. That's good. Okay, so next question: to what extent do specialty internships, clerkships, and post graduate jobs due to the transcript analysis? For example, will a federal judge look at your transcript and compare it to other candidates, not for grades, but for course selection? Oh, in a way. So like there are certain types of extracurricular activities that are highly valued if you're planning to do litigation, for example. So if you're going to do litigation, then, moot court, mock trial are always good for extracurricular activity experience. They might also want to take, have you take some classes that are litigation focused, oral advocacy, those kinds of things. If you're clerking for a federal judge, writing is key. So you need to like blow legal writing out of the water. You need to take a couple of advanced writing courses, probably do law review. There are definitely types of activities that will be tailored for certain types of jobs. So for example, like I wanted to do trademark and copyright work after law school, right? So there was a clinic at my law school that was certified by the US Patent and Trademark Office, which would allow students to prosecute trademark applications before the USPTO before graduating. So that was super helpful in learning how to actually practice the kind of law that I was going to practice after law school. So definitely there are extracurricular activities that will allow you to get a better sense of whatever area that you're going into. So if you're planning on going into a specific specialty, you may want to take more courses that are focused in that specialty, or take extracurricular activities focused in that specialty. Like our law school also participated in a trademarks moot court competition, so I did that as well. Every school will have different offerings, so that may also highly change which schools you apply to. I think that you should definitely, if you're interested in a niche practice area, you should look at the extracurricular offerings of your school. Do they have a clinic focus in that area? Do they have a moot court competition or some other sort of competition focus in that area? Do they have, lots of things that would allow you to get experience in those areas? And it's going to be really hard for you to know whether your practice area is niche or broad without talking to practitioners. So I would just talk to practitioners in the areas that you're interested in. I'll tell you that these emerging practice areas, areas like cannabis law, or even privacy, data privacy, cybersecurity, all of those areas tend to be more niche. So you're going to have to look for more specialized programs at these schools. Let's see. Number 4, how do you really know if law school is the right option for you? Good question. Talk to a lot of lawyers. Get a sense of, can I see myself being that person? Does that person look miserable? Do I really think that I really want to do this for the next 50 years of my life? Just talk to lawyers. There's no substitute for it. There is no amount of internet research that you can do, or no amount of hours that you can spend reading the law school Reddit that is going to be a good substitute for talking to lawyers. Just find out if you actually want to be one. Ultimately, at the end of the game, law school is a trade school. They're teaching you to go eventually be a lawyer. So if you don't actually want to be a lawyer, there's no point in going to that school. People have all sorts of different reasons for going to law school. I hear many people who go to law school because honestly, they were pre-med and their parents won't accept anything else. So they go to law school and then they find out they hate it. Really think about the reasons that you're going to law school, and what are your motivations? What's driving you? Is it money? Is it prestige? Is it academics? What is driving you for that choice? Really, really think about it. And talk to a lot of lawyers and see what their experiences were. Ask them, why did you decide to go to law school? How did you pick law schools? Were you happy with your law school? Are you happy with your career now? Ask them all those value-based things so that you can figure out, okay, do I relate to those answers? Or now that I hear all these answers over and over again, does that just scare me? Really think about it. Let's see, number 5. Tell me about the ways that external scholarships can be used on law school. Okay, well, I mean, there's plenty of third parties that offer scholarships to law students. So, like bar associations. Oh my gosh, like every single bar association has some sort of scholarship that you can apply for towards law school. So, let me see
Asked
here.
about finding them. So if you don't know, like, let's say I moved to, for example, Michigan, I'm in New York or California, whatever, how you find them if you're not, for example, from the area or you don't know about those
I
things.
would start with bar associations. I mean, every city or state is usually going to have a bar association, so I would start there and see if they have scholarships that you can apply for. There's also affinity bar associations, so like women related bar associations. So here in Dallas, we have the Dallas Women Lawyers Association. So like they offer a scholarship that you can apply for. So there's tons of different organizations that do that. I mean, you can also apply for writing competitions and all sorts of stuff that isn't necessarily just law school related. There's also, scholarships that you can apply for any woman who is pursuing a career, that will further like social justice or something. So you can like apply for stuff that's not just directly law focused. Um, but yeah, I would definitely cast your net really, really wide. Does anybody? And oh, you should definitely also follow Rakeisha Davidson. So Rakeisha, she posts on LinkedIn. She posts all sorts of scholarships on LinkedIn. She does research independently and just finds all these scholarships for people to apply for. So totally follow her on LinkedIn. She's amazing. Let's see. What else do we have on here? Would the bar exam questions for one type of law or will be mixed for other types of law? So this varies depending on your state. So everybody has to take the MBE, the multi-state bar examination, which is a bunch of multiple choice questions. So everybody takes the same standardized MBE. Now, there will also be usually a second day or even a third day that tests all the state laws. So like in Texas, I know for the longest time they did oil and gas, and I think they also do a lot in deceptive trade practices. But usually they will give you a list. Like Barbary gave us a list of the 23 most common tested subjects, essay subjects on the Virginia bar exam. And we had to study all of those in the off chance that any of them would appear on our bar exam. But we only had 7 questions ultimately. So it's kind of a crapshoot. You really don't know what's going to show up. So there's usually a, multi-state day, which is the same no matter what jurisdiction you sit for. And then there's state specific days, and then the states decide what they want to test on those days. So it will be state specific law generally on those days. Let's see here. Should I go to a higher ranking school full-time or a part-time lower ranking one? So this is, again, totally up to you depending on your lifestyle choice. So, it matters if, as far as I know, most of the top T14 schools don't really have part-time programs. So maybe a couple do, but most of them don't. So you probably will end up going to a little lower ranked one if you're going part-time. But maybe you're going part-time for good reasons. So for example, if you're working full-time as a paralegal in doing something that's like law related, and you already know that you want to go into that practice area and you already have connections and you don't really need to rely on prestige alone to get you that job after law school, well then that doesn't matter all that much. The rankings won't matter all that much. Now, people who go kindergarten through Juris Doctor degree have nothing on their have nothing on their transcript except for grades. They might be banking a little bit more on the prestige. And again, it also depends on your specialty areas. So if you're focused in, like me, I was focused in intellectual property law, super niche practice area. So if you're focusing on going to a school that's really strong in that area, that might not lead you to the T14 schools. So I think that it's highly probable that the best fit of school for you may not be that in the top 14 range. And that's totally okay. That doesn't mean you can't get a good job. I mean, I got a wonderful job coming out of law school, making 6 figures a year at, still doing very well for myself. So I think it's totally fine if you don't go to a top tier law school. And especially if you don't want to go incur that amount of debt. I mean, these schools are super expensive. If you guys haven't looked at it yet, you should definitely check out lawschooltransparency.com. Law School Transparency has a table of how much it would cost if you paid for your entire legal education on debt alone. And it allows you to kind of compare the schools based on that. Now, know that you probably won't pay it all on debt, but if you do, this is how much you're in for. And that chart just like floored me when I looked at it, because some of these schools, especially the top 14 schools, you're looking at over $300,000 full debt cost of attendance, which is just bonkers. It's literally a house of debt. So just think about that before you decide to go invest in that. Let's see here. What else do we have? Oh my goodness, there's a bunch of questions. For UNT law, is the LSAT required? Yes, I believe so. Viola, did you know?
Yes, ma'am. I answered it lower
Okay.
down, but
Oh, great. Let's see. I mean, for the most part, most law schools are going to require the LSAT. Some are now accepting GRE, but even still, they make all their scholarship decisions based on the LSAT. So I would take the LSAT. Let's see here. Let's see. Yes, the patent bar is a different test. So as far as I know, patents is the only specialty area that has its own bar exam. So you go and you take the patent bar exam to get certified to prosecute patents before the Patent and Trademark Office. So the patent bar exam is an additional bar that you will take, but you will have to be licensed as an attorney in one of the 50 states first, if you want to be a patent attorney. Now, if you want to just be a patent agent, where you can prosecute patents but you don't have a law degree, you can go and take the patent bar anytime, even before law school if you wanted, and you can just become a patent agent. But you wouldn't be considered a patent attorney until you pass both the patent bar and a bar in one of the 50 states or DC. Let me see. Interested in IP law, immigration law, real estate law. How do you compare them in general, competitive, demanding, or salary wise? Hey guys. So one thing about talking to lawyers is that most of us only know our practice area. So I cannot help you compare immigration law, real estate law, and IP law, but you can go talk to other immigration lawyers, and then you can talk to me, and then you can talk to real estate lawyers, and then compare them yourself. But I probably can't do that work for you. So I can tell you, generally what I know about other practice areas, but it's going to be very, very small. So especially in a practice area as niche as IP, it's just very different than most others. So I'll tell you, in intellectual property, I feel like it's one of the best kept secrets because it's still a practice area where you can still get out and make like 6 figures a year right away. So I also think, with IP, there's 2 different types of clients you could be serving, right? You could be working with small businesses and entrepreneurs. And so you might be making, you might have a volume practice where you're doing lots of trademark applications for small businesses. And in which case, you might not be getting paid near as well as somebody who practices intellectual property at a large, massive law firm. Now, when you're working for a large, massive law firm, you're usually serving large, massive clients. So your client base is typically, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies. So the type of work that you do, you're not going to work as closely with like an entrepreneur or a business owner. You might be working with a lawyer, in their in-house department who is one of hundreds of lawyers. So it's not going to feel as close, but you may be making more money. You're just not going to feel as close to your clients. So, even within trademark and copyright practice, it can be really different as far as how much money you make, the types of clients you work with, how competitive it is, all of that. So, and again, talk to practitioners, they will tell you. Let's see. What other questions? Also interested in applying for Canadian law schools? Oh, that I have no idea. I really don't. Sorry, Harshita. I have no idea about Canadian law schools or whether they're helpful or not, or similar to ours or not. Let's see. Explain the federal bar. Like getting admitted to the federal bar?
No. So one of my bar associations that I'm like a pre-law member of now is like the Puerto Rican Bar Association, and they said there's a federal bar, I guess, that people in Puerto Rico take, but maybe also people in DC, or like how does that work? Because there's only like federal, like Guam, like what is it? Because I'm thinking of state bars, but then there's like a non-state federal bar.
I think might know what you're talking about. My class will be the first class that does not take the Texas bar. We're taking the uniform bar.
No, but that's different. The uniform bar examination, the UBE, is different from the federal bar. So the federal bar, so that you can get admitted to the federal bar to practice in federal courts, but that's not a bar exam. You go and apply to a court to be admitted to the federal bar to practice in federal courts. That's different. But as far as a federal bar exam, I've never heard of one.
Yeah.
There's a DC bar exam, and plenty of people take that one, but I don't know what federal bar you would be referring to.
So it sounded, again, this is from people from Puerto Rico, so it sounded like there was a federal bar for non-state entities like Puerto Rico, which I thought might include DC, but I'm not sure if it's the same as DC. So it may be something I have to ask one of them about. Sorry.
Yeah, maybe, because I have never heard of that actually. So, I mean, I took the Virginia bar. I had the option of either taking Virginia, Maryland, or DC. But if you are admitted to any state, you can get waived into DC. So, so I didn't think that it was worth taking the DC bar. I just took Virginia so I could waive into DC. And then Maryland doesn't have like reciprocity with anybody, so I didn't think it was worth taking Maryland. But I've never heard of a federal bar, but that would be an interesting one to look up. Emily, let me know what you find out.
Will do. And then if I could ask another question, I've taken up so many of the questions.
No, it's all good.
Can you explain how this UBE thing works to me? If I want to do, for example, I'm up in the Northeast, so New York and New Jersey, and they both have the UBE in common, and then they have their own state sections. So do I take, for example, the New York and the UBE, and then the next time the bar is offered, take the New Jersey one, because you can't take two states at the same time, or unless they're like different days, I guess. I think they said New York, it goes like New York, UBE, New Jersey in like a 3-day order. But so then if I wanted to, I don't know, do another UBE state, like, I don't know, Texas or whatever, would I then take it the next bar administration? Or like, how does that work? Because
I actually have no idea. UBE came around after I graduated law school. So I graduated law school in 2013, and the uniform bar exam was not a thing back then. So I actually do not know. But I can look it up and I can write a blog post about it. So, so I will try to track that information down for you, because I do think that a lot of other people will be interested in it too. But I do not know off the top of my head, so I don't want to lead you astray. Yes, I will tag you, Emily, when I write that. Let's see. How often do law schools accept applications after the deadline? They don't. I mean, generally they don't have to, because they have way more than enough people who applied during the deadline. If you, is there anything else that you can do to start this fall? Probably not. Yeah. If you miss the LSAT deadline for February, that means that you won't get anything back until probably March or April. There's only just a few law schools left that are going to have applications still open at that time. And again, it's going to be more competitive during that time. So I would highly
late February to the 20th, so you won't get your score back to March, even if you take February.
Yeah.
I'm taking February.
So I would just highly recommend waiting until the next cycle. I know nobody ever wants to hear that, but just wait. And then, I mean, here's the other thing, guys, like just in all practicality, like in current times, you're going to be going to online law school, whether you like it or not. And I mean, if even the law school, law schools themselves didn't think that online education was going to cut it for like the longest amount of years. So I don't know why all of a sudden everybody thinks now that it'll work. But people are having very mixed results in law school right now. Talk to a lot of law students. I would bet you dollars to donuts they would tell you that they don't think they're getting what their money's worth out of law school right now. So like, if you can wait just one more cycle so that you can enter law school, on your terms instead of having to do online law school. I mean, a huge part of the law school experience is bonding with your fellow classmates and building those connections so that you can have those connections for business development, employment, all sorts of other things later on in life. So why cheat yourself out of all those things if you don't have to go right now? I mean, if your reasons for not going to law school or for going to law school right now are like, oh, I think I have momentum, so I've got to go. No, sadly, whatever momentum you think you have in undergrad, law school is a totally different ballgame. It's just going to zap the momentum out of you. So that is ludicrous. If you're trying to go to law school to avoid getting a job, that's also not a good one because you're about to go dig yourself into the red. I mean, even if you went and got a minimum wage job, you'd be in the green versus going to dig yourself $100,000 in debt for, something that you don't even know if you want to actually do. So just really think about it. Make sure you're getting your experience worth, make sure you're making these law schools work for that money. You're paying a crap ton of money to them. Make sure they're giving you the experience that you deserve for it. And I just don't think a lot of law students right now feel like they're getting that in COVID-19 times. So really think about it. Are there any books besides LSAT prep books that you recommend for pre-law students? Yes. So the Law School Admissions Game by Anne Levine. That one's really good. She also has another one, a sequel, the Law School Decision Game of trying to decide whether or not law school is right for you. That one's pretty good too. I think just there's there's another one called what's that one called? Roadmap by Neil. Hold on, Roadmap. I think it's Neil Hamilton. Let me look. Yes, Roadmap, the Law Student's Guide to Preparing and Implementing a Successful Plan for Employment. If you read that before going to law school, it just helps you clarify what do law students actually have to do to get a job? And how might I start doing that before going to law school? Like doing my career exploration and figuring out exactly what practice areas I want to be in. Because guys, you apply to law school, you get in August, and the earliest that you start applying for jobs is in December. And if you don't know which practice areas you're interested in, you're going to feel like you're behind the 8 ball in December when they're like, you need to start applying to jobs because you're like, wait, what? I just spent the last 3 months trying to learn how to law school. I was not thinking about what kind of lawyer I want to be, what do I want to be when I grow up? That doesn't give you time to do any of that. So do all of your career exploration before you get into law school, please. If you're wondering what could I be doing with myself for a year if I'm taking a gap year, or what could I be doing with myself if I can't go to law school right now, you could be figuring out what being a lawyer is really like and whether or not you really want to be one. Let's see. How important or bad is a law school experience that isn't in the jurisdiction you want to practice in, like a clinic in another state's law? Emily, you want to clarify that one for me? I'm not really sure what you mean. Clinics are generally in certain practice areas.
Right. So if I go to school, again, I'm this is kind of all under the umbrella of in-state versus out-of-state kind of question. If I go to law school in, for example, California or Michigan, and the kind of clinic that I do is in a state-specific law, so let's say state taxes or state civil rights or something, state criminal law, but then I'm going to come back to New York after learning Michigan criminal law. Some things are uniform, I get that, and they're based on the model penal code, for example.
Okay.
But some of them are very specific to the jurisdiction, and then if I'm trying to move back to New York, it's not going to be applicable.
Yeah, I think that clinics are good experience no matter what, really, because they also look good on your law school transcript because they people know that the skills that you're building in a clinic is really working with clients, doing case management, all the things that kind of are transferable. You're not going to get to do so many matters in the clinic that you're going to learn the substantive law super, super well anyway. I mean, I participated in a trademark and copyright clinic, and I was only in charge of 2 applications for the entire semester. So that's 2 matters. So you're not going to learn anything substantively super, super deep. But the whole point of being in a clinic is so that you learn how to do a client intake, so that you can learn how to manage a case, so that you learn how to manage your own files, that kind of thing. So I don't think that that really cuts against you. Now, whether you go to law school in the jurisdiction you want to practice in, again, is going to be a question of what type of law you want to be in. So like intellectual property law is typically federal law. So trademark, patent, copyright are all federal laws. So it doesn't really matter what state you're in, the federal practice of that law will be the same. So for me, I, ended up practicing in DC, but I went to law school in New Hampshire. That didn't matter at all because I was doing federal law that was all focused in IP. So in some practice areas, it's not going to matter as much where you're located in, if you're doing family law or something that is very state law focused, that might matter. But I still, I think you'd have to just talk to practitioners in those areas to really know. Do I think that legal job experience, legal certificates are demonstrated in area in a specific law field is heavily considered in applying for law school? I think that law schools just want to know that you're going to survive and that you know what you're getting into. So like, I think that the whole point that they want you to have work experience is so that they know that you know what working for a lawyer is like and what being a lawyer will be. And so that when you get into it, you're not going to quit. And that you're well suited to the rigors of law school because it's very academically rigorous. So like they want to see something that shows that you've undertaken a challenging course of study and you've survived it. So I think that as far as having a demonstrated interest in a specific law field, no, that won't be considered heavily in going to law school, but just knowing why you want to be a lawyer is important. So, oh yeah, that's a good book too, Get a Running Start. So let's see. I'm sorry, just looking at the chat box here. Do I recommend taking a gap year or two? Yes, I do. I really, really do. I know nobody ever wants to hear it, but I really do because honestly, especially if you went straight from kindergarten into undergrad, there will be no other time in your life that you get to really take a break. Like law school is going to be a rush. You're going to get out and then all of a sudden you're going to be working and you're never going to have that time for yourself. So take some time for yourself. Take some time for yourself to figure out who you are, what motivates you, what drives you, what really makes you want to be an attorney. Why do you really want to be an attorney? Do you want to, like, I hear this all the time. People are like, I want to help people. I'm like, great. What kind of things do you want to help them with? And they're like, no idea. I'm like, okay, well then you need to clarify that a little more. So yes, I highly recommend taking a gap year, taking that time to figure out, what kind of lawyer do you want to be? Do you know anything about being a lawyer? And what motivates you? Like, again, are you motivated by prestige? Are you motivated by money? Are you motivated by literally wanting to help people? Like, what are you motivated by? I think that all of that, you should take the time for yourself to figure all those things out before starting law school. The best way to make use of that gap year, talk to lawyers and go work for a lawyer if you can. Now, yes, it's very hard to get a job for a lawyer if you haven't been in law school. Most legal internships are for law students, but there's also a ton of like fellowship programs. And, if you get to know lawyers well through networking, they're going to be more likely to hire you for internship positions, even if they don't normally take college interns. You have to kind of get to know people well. So spend time networking with lawyers. And yeah, I think that's the best way to make use of that gap year, honestly. Does anybody else have anything? I think I finally got through all the ones in the chat. There was a lot. So what else do y'all have?
I know I'm jumping ahead of myself, but so in terms of things that I guess have come up when I'm looking at various law schools or I'm in like the law school fair, like the New York City Bar Conference fair last year, is the extent to which you have control over your electives, not your ABA classes, but like any electives you might have spring of your 1L and then your 2L and 3L classes. And so particularly because I was asking about in question 3 about like judges who ask about your transcripts and stuff. I'm wondering whether it's like important to pick a law school as a secondary matter after location, after cost, after everything else, where you have the option to pick electives where you will get the chance to be able to take classes in those like important things, like you said, legal writing, for example, or whether it's something where they open up a lot more sections
Yeah, I
because
mean,
legal writing is so important and they want people to get clerkships, so it's not like competitive.
depending on the practice area focus, again, sometimes that might be the most important thing. I mean, I chose my law school because of my practice area focus. There was nothing in the world that would have made me go to New Hampshire otherwise. Like, I'm from Texas, I don't like cold. I mean, like, I barely survived 3 years in New Hampshire, but I went specifically because I really wanted to be focused in IP, and then secondarily because they gave me a good scholarship. So, for me, like the number one factor in choosing my school was practice area. The number two factor was cost, and like the last factor was location. But for other people, your mix might be totally different. I know
Yeah,
that's not
I guess my concern is like, I'll use your example then, is if you go to a school like New Hampshire that has your specific specialty area, but then you don't necessarily like have the option to take those classes because like the 3Ls might bump you out or a professor might change over, like how much can that be used as a reliable metric at the institutional level when you're making those like really finite decisions?
Well, because my school was like so heavily focused in that area, it like you were almost guaranteed that you could take those courses. Like there was enough professors teaching them that you could always fit them into your schedules. So I think that, yeah, if you're trying to shoot for like a particular clinic that is only offered once a year and it's taught by one professor, you might want to be careful about that. But other than that, I mean, if your school is just very, prominent in that area, I mean, like, for example, there's like some schools that are like really prominent in employment law and they have tons of different offerings in employment law. So even if you can't do the clinic, you could do one of the competitions, or you could do, you could be a research assistant for one of the professors or whatever it is. So, like, there might still be a ton of other things at that school that attract you there. You should never just pick based on like one extracurricular. But yeah, I mean, you have a lot of freedom in your 2L and 3L years to pick courses. Like your 1L year is the only one that's like 100% set. They don't really let you pick. But 2L and 3L, it's really up to you. So, any other questions?
Can I follow up if I'm not crowding anyone else out?
Hey, well, nobody's asking questions. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Ask away.
Well, on that same note, so how much is like the extracurricular abilities of the school? So like a school will say like, oh, we have the #1 moot court team in the nation or something like that. I don't know because I'm not like reading a book in front of me, but how much of that is like the student dedication versus like the school like proliferating their success? So like if I go to, I don't know, Miami, which has the #1 moot court competition, versus like a Yale, where like I would bring my successes with me, versus like that's something they prepare you to compete with at like an extracurricular level.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it does have a lot to do with how well the school prepares you for those things because there's a lot of institutional knowledge. I mean, for example, my school kind of dominated this trademark moot court competition because we had sent teams there every single year and we just knew that competition really well, and so like all of my coaches were able to give me a lot of insider information as to how it all ran. So, me and my partner, we won nationals in that moot court competition, but I attribute a lot of it to the coaching that we received. I mean, yeah, did we work our asses off? Sure. But like, it was still a lot of like insider information that the school gave us, that our coaches gave us. So I think it's a little bit of both. It's how good the student is, it's how good the school is. What else do we have here? Are the law school courses emphasizing more writing than reading? I hear stories that you must read. Oh my gosh, I don't even know how to answer that. I think law school is all just writing and reading. I mean, you're not going to get away with not reading. You're not going to get away with not writing either. I mean, there's a lot of both for sure. And if you don't like writing or reading, oh, you're in the wrong place. Because you're going to be reading hundreds of pages every night. So both, I think. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I know we're at 1 p.m., but if anybody has more follow-up questions that you want to just shoot to me via email, I'm happy to answer them. I hope this was helpful. I really hope that all of you guys, pursue your legal careers and feel very successful in it. So I just want to emphasize, like, just start it on your own terms. Make sure that you know what you're getting into and make sure that you are ready to start law school when you pursue it and that you get the most out of your experience. So, so just think about the decision, carefully before you go. And then, once you're in law school, there will be a whole boatload of new things to worry about. So come back to me then and then ask me all your questions then too. So it was a pleasure answering all your questions. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me via email afterwards. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys on Thursday. So talk to you all soon.